Hello, my dear friends, and welcome to this always fresh and renewed episode. Before we start, I hope you subscribe to the channel to receive all updates as soon as they are released. Click the like button below and let us know in the comments where you are watching from. Now, let's begin. After striking the American fighter jets, downing F-15s and A-10s, hitting Black Hawks, and attacking sea helicopters in Kuwait, there was a major operation by Iran. Trump remained silent for 24 hours, which was very unusual for him because he is usually talkative. Every few minutes, he would normally announce that Iran had been defeated, that their airspace was destroyed, and that they had been cut off. After 24 hours of silence, he finally threatened retaliation and reminded the world that he had given Iran a deadline to open the Strait of Hormuz. He warned that if Iran did not comply, he would unleash hell, striking all energy and oil facilities inside Iran within 48 hours, while Israel awaited a green light from the US to begin a comprehensive and systematic destruction of Iranian energy and oil infrastructure. Trump deliberately chose escalation, pushing the region toward a crisis, despite an almost unanimous assessment that using force to open the Strait of Hormuz would be extremely difficult. Even the Wall Street Journal, which generally supports military action, described the task as nearly impossible. The strait is heavily monitored by powerful drones, and any ship could be easily targeted, making control extremely difficult. U.S. intelligence estimates, according to Reuters, indicate that Iran would maintain dominance over the strait, which is their most significant leverage. Controlling trade and energy flow in the strait means that the more destruction occurs in Iran, the more tightly they hold the Strait of Hormuz, which in turn would worsen the global energy and oil crisis. Bloomberg, citing the Washington Post, projected that oil prices could reach $170 within 3 months, potentially triggering a global recession, widespread unemployment, and a severe economic downturn. Iran continues to sell oil and could charge compensation fees for damages from attacks on energy facilities, which would become catastrophic if all oil infrastructure were targeted. Trump's approach repeatedly pushes the region toward dangerous escalation, risking U.S. national security, military resources, and weapons stockpiles. Reports indicate that U.S. stocks of crucial cruise missiles are nearly depleted. The United States, after 12 days of conflict, deployed 2,800 missiles, drawing from Asian bases including Japan, South Korea, the Philippines, and Pacific bases. This has exhausted their cruise missile reserves, leaving critical strategic vulnerabilities. The effectiveness of these strikes has been limited because Iran preserved underground ballistic missile cities and launch sites. Even after U.S. attacks, Iran retains the ability to launch 30 missiles daily, 20 aimed at Israel, while maintaining a decentralized distribution across the country. Israel's defenses have been insufficient. For example, 1,000 Iranian missiles have struck with limited interception. While the US and Israel admit that many decoys were destroyed, but Iran preserved a significant portion of its arsenal. Consequently, Iran can continue targeting Israel for at least 3 months, with every missile expected to hit its target. Regarding drones, they remain entirely outside U.S. reach, providing Iran with massive control over the Strait of Hormuz. Combined with ongoing ballistic missile production, approximately 30 missiles per month, they maintain a sustained military presence in the region. The situation presents a massive challenge to global stability, with strategic implications for energy, trade, and security in the Middle East and beyond. But maintaining control over the Strait of Hormuz indefinitely is a very serious problem for the United States. According to various articles, including public relations pieces in the Wall Street Journal, this war has significantly affected the U.S. economy. They claim that the U.S. is benefiting from selling a lot of oil and gas, but in reality, the profits mainly go to energy companies, not the United States itself. There is a difference between the American government and energy companies. The companies sell gas and oil at high prices, which increases inflation in the US. The effect on the US is significant because the more energy is sold to Europe, the more leverage they have over the European market. However, Europe also buys from Russia, and energy remains a limited and strategic commodity. When energy supply is constrained and under your control, it becomes extremely valuable, and prices rise dramatically. High prices for shipments of gas or oil directly affect U.S. imports, consumer goods, and services. Industries dependent on energy, such as rubber or machinery manufacturing, will experience increased costs. The impact is widespread. Energy companies earn enormous profits at the expense of the global economy. Consumers in the U.S. face higher prices for gasoline and goods, and transport and shipping costs increase. Even Asian markets, which rely on imports, are affected. The overall effect on financial markets and production is substantial. Energy abundance is essential for economic growth, but when energy is scarce and expensive, economic growth slows and recession risks rise. Many public relations articles claim that the U.S. is benefiting, but in reality, global energy shortages push the world toward economic hardship. Oil prices rising from $111 to $120 per barrel, combined with disruptions in Iranian infrastructure and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, create a catastrophic situation. Even helium, fertilizers, and other key materials become more expensive, and the U.S. does not impose price caps on these high-priced products. Private companies, not the government, control most energy exports, so setting artificial price limits would fail. Attempting such interventions would be disastrous. The notion that the U.S. has become more dominant simply because it produces energy is misleading. True energy dominance requires abundant supply, affordable prices, and the ability to reliably feed global markets, including Asia and Europe. What is happening now is extremely volatile, and if this situation continues for months or years, it could trigger a global catastrophe. Iran's ability to endure and maintain its position is also crucial. Their missile capabilities could sustain pressure for 3 months or more, with possibly up to 2,000 missiles in reserve, making any long-term U.S. strategy highly uncertain. The United States doesn't really know what to do. All their estimates have turned out to be wrong, including Israel's. For example, if the Russians supply the Iranians with missiles built on Russian soil, as was the case with Shahed missiles, and develop a transport corridor across the Caspian Sea, it becomes very difficult for the U.S. to cut off maritime supplies. Hitting 1 shipment, 2 shipments, 3 shipments doesn't stop the flow entirely. They might maintain some level of disruption, but let's assume they cannot fully control it. Suppose the Strait of Hormuz remains closed for 14 months. The Iranians hold the strait. What can the US do next? Let's consider a somewhat extreme scenario. The US and Israel conduct massive strikes on Iran, dropping 40,000 tons of bombs. Imagine the US escalates this to 750,000 tons, combined with deploying a herbicidal agent, not a pesticide, but a defoliant like Agent Orange, devastating crops. C-130 aircraft dropped these chemicals on Khuzestan's agricultural fields, water sources, and dams over several years in secret operations. The plants die, crops are destroyed, yields become carcinogenic, and the soil becomes infertile. The destruction doesn't stop at agriculture. All infrastructure in Iran, under the label of critical infrastructure, is wiped out. Entire cities are erased from the map. Could Iran survive? What I'm telling you is that a similar scenario happened in Vietnam. Over 8 years of American intervention in Vietnam, spanning a 20-year civil conflict from 1955 onward, the U.S. engaged in air, land, and sea operations, imposing blockades and killing millions. Between 1965 and 1973, the U.S. military killed over 3 million people in North Vietnam. Yet, the global consensus is that North Vietnam ultimately prevailed. After the war, sanctions and embargoes remained in place for 20 years until 1995. Unlike Vietnam, in this scenario, the U.S. would capture the strait, a critical strategic prize controlling 20% of global energy, including gas, oil, fertilizers, aluminum, and other resources. Global production would halt, energy costs would skyrocket, and worldwide inflation and recession would follow. Trump's presence in the region demonstrates that even after partial destruction, the impact is enormous but far from total. Unlike Vietnam, where no infrastructure existed akin to modern Iran's, Iran could resist and maintain control. The US cannot simply destroy the regime, seize resources, and achieve absolute dominance. Energy exports, including oil from the Persian Gulf, would remain under Iran's control. Even with high-priced oil, global supply is limited, prices would spike, and inflation would surge. Some American companies would profit, but the broader US economy would suffer. Attempts to impose price caps would fail because private companies control most energy exports. A full-scale invasion scenario would require 2 million US troops to attempt to seize Iran and its oil fields. A logistical, military, and human nightmare. Such a war could last years and still fail due to Iranian resistance and the difficulty of controlling strategic choke points like the Strait of Hormuz. The US could try to convert its economy into a war economy, prioritizing military production, but even then, global market disruption, energy shortages, and sanctions on rare metals would complicate efforts. In short, any unilateral attempt by the US to dominate Iran and the Strait is extremely risky. Iran's ability to resist and hold the Strait would result in a strategic failure for the US, leaving the Strait in Iranian hands as a powerful geopolitical prize. The situation is extremely dangerous, and every development must be monitored closely. Thank you for watching. I invite you, my friends, to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. Also, please like the video below, as this helps the channel reach more viewers. Thank you very much. This was Dr. John Dare, and I'll see you in the next recording.